Hello, thanks for watching. If you didn't catch my last video, I did a two-part challenge on Instagram to create holiday party outfits using thrifted materials. For part 2, I wanted to create a designer look for less and was inspired by this dress from Maria Lucia Lohan after coming across a similar looking material. I found a set of window treatments which consisted of a pair of curtains and a scarf valance. In total, I had over 8 yards of fabric to work with. We have quite a bit to cover, so let's jump right in. The lining is from my stash. I didn't have much and the color wasn't perfect, but I felt it could work. Not sure of the fabric content, but it's lightweight and has a little stretch. Okay, so I jumped a little ahead here because the lining for the bodice was pretty simple. Taking my measurements, I measured and marked my center front length, followed by my front neck, then half my waist measurement. I then joined the neck and the waist to form the armholes, and as you can see, added a ½ inch allowance. For the bottom half, I did a partial lining with the rest of the fabric. Although I was doing a gathered skirt with the pleated fabric, I made the lining into an A-line skirt to reduce the bulk at the waist. To do that, I first folded the fabric in half, then located the center point. From there, I measured and marked my hip measurement, then drew a line to the corners of the fabric to create an A-line. I then sewed the side seams closed and the lining was ready to go. For this step, I did a little prep work to make the cutting process easier. First, I laid out one of the curtain panels, then carefully placed the other on top, halfway with the right sides facing. Before continuing, I placed a piece of masking tape along the hem to keep them together. Then using my yardstick, I measured and marked my desired length. To keep the fabric taut while cutting, I placed a few weights along the other end, then ran another piece of tape along the cutting line. I then sewed up the sides of the skirt, then gathered the waist the same width as the lining. Shifting back over to the bodice, I went ahead and cut a piece of the fabric the same width as the lining, doing my best to maintain the shape of the pleats. As you can see here, I also gathered one side until it was the same width as the halter neck. I then pinned them together right sides facing and sewed them in place. Now I wanted my neckline to have that same seamless look, so I folded over the pleated fabric an 1.5 inches before sewing up the sides. I cut 2 strips 17 by 5, then cut the ends at an angle so they lay flat in the back. With right sides facing, I sewed the sides, leaving a 3/4 inch opening at the top. I also left one end open. From there, I flipped the panel back on the right side, then stitch along the sides, starting from the bottom of the opening to prevent the lining from showing. First, I quickly trimmed and tacked the waist of the bodice to keep the lining in place. Next, I placed the skirt inside the lining with right sides facing, then pinned the side seams together. I also measured and marked the center front for both the skirt and the bodice. Taking the bodice, I placed it between the skirt and the facing with waistlines and right sides together. Before pinning, I matched up the center front points. Once I was done pinning the front, I flipped the skirt over to pin the panels in the back. At the side seams, I overlapped the panels and the bodice about 1 inch. I forgot to mention, but before sewing the panels, I made sure they were facing the opposite direction. After pinning, I sewed all around the waist a ½ inch from the edge. Next, to add the elastic to the waist, I sewed a casing, leaving an opening for the elastic. Okay, so you may be confused and wondering why I'm showing you this belt hanger. The thing is, I had a tough time finding hardware for the neck until I remembered this belt hanger I found at the thrift store months prior. I grabbed it from my closet to use as a quick substitute until I find something more ideal. Now for the part you've been waiting for. I'll show you how I did one section of the belt since it was all done the same. In total, I cut 6 squares of fabric 8 by 8 and 3 strips of boning 6 inches in length. I rounded off the sharp edges first with my scissors, then polished them up by moving them around a candle flame. Okay, now moving on to constructing the belt. Taking the squares, I sewed them together right sides facing with the pleats running horizontal. I then placed the boning onto the center of the seam, then sewed along the edges to secure it in place. Next, I went ahead and sewed the other ends together to form a channel. From there, I sewed the sides closed, leaving an opening on each corner for the rings. On one corner, I left a larger opening to flip the panel back on the right side. Then, like the other corners, I sewed it closed, leaving a 1/2 inch opening. Next, I sewed a stitch down the center front before inserting the rings. Afterwards, I sewed along the edge of the rings and added straps to the ends. And for the final step, I marked where I wanted to split, then cut using a pleat as a guide. I did end up having to cut into the lining, but I simply turned the raw edges under and sewed them together. There's just one last thing I did that I want to quickly mention. The curtains all came with these weight cords in the hem, and I wanted to see how the dress would hang with them in, so I inserted them back in with a safety pin. Let's see! Here's the final look. Thanks again for watching. Links on similar items I used are in the description below. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, and if you'd like to see more DIYs, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, bye!